Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Welcome to episode 7 of the Running Mate Timeline, where we'll be discussing the years of 1914 all the way through 1934. So let's take a look. In 1914, the U.S. occupation of Veracruz would happen throughout this year. President Marshall would sign the Federal Trade Commission Act, which would establish the Federal Trade Commission. President Marshall would sign the Harrison Narcotics Act, which would regulate and tax opiates and cocoa products coming in from Hawaii. In 1915, the U.S. occupation of Haiti would begin. In 1916, the U.S. occupation of the Dominican Republic begins as well. We also have the 1916 election, but first, Marshall would sign the Merchant Marine Act of 1916, which establishes the U.S. Shipping Board. In the 1916 election, the Democrats would renominate Thomas Marshall once again for, I believe, a third time. Yes, a third time, running for a third term. And Republicans would nominate former State Secretary Charles Fairbanks from the Theodore Roosevelt administration. And Thomas Marshall would win 303 to 231 to win a third term. Going on to 1917, U.S. would enter World War I, and the first Red Scare would begin. However, there is no Espionage Act. Marshall was actually against Woodrow Wilson's Espionage Act, but wasn't very vocal about it, so he wouldn't sign an Espionage Act during it if he was president. 1918, the U.S. time zones would be established and World War I would end. Going on to 1919, the 18th Amendment would be ratified, which is prohibition. The 19th Amendment is ratified, which is women's suffrage. And President Marshall would sign the Treaty of Versailles, which, establishes the League of Nations. Well, there would be no League of Nations since there's no Woodrow Wilson. 1920, the first Red Scare would end. However, the Depression of 1920 to 21 would begin. And up until that point, Democrats would be in a good spot once again. However, that's not the case due to this Depression. And Republicans would nominate Massachusetts Governor Calvin Coolidge, and Democrats would nominate Secretary of War Franklin Roosevelt, and due to the Depression, Coolidge would defeat Franklin Roosevelt 345 to 189. So, there goes Roosevelt's chance of becoming president. 1921, the Depression of 1920 to 21 would end. There is nothing noteworthy in 1922, as well as nothing noteworthy in 1923. Going on in 1924, President Coolidge would pass the Asian Exclusion Act. 1920, we also have the 1924 election, which the Democrats would nominate Nebraska Governor Charles Bryan, who was the brother of William Jennings Bryan, and Progressives would nominate, Montana Senator Burton K. Wheeler, and he would also win the state of Alaska at this point, and thus Calvin Coolidge would defeat both Charles Bryan and Burton Wheeler 330 to 197 to 7 to win re-election to a second term. 1925, there is nothing noteworthy. 1926, nothing noteworthy, as well as in 1927, so Calvin Coolidge is a pretty boring term. And going on to 1928, Republicans would nominate Kansas Senator Charles Curtis, and Democrats would nominate, Alabama Senator Joseph Robinson, a Southerner. I think he was either Alabama or Arkansas. It's one of the two. But due to the raging economy, the good economy, Charles Curtis ends up defeating Joseph Robinson 403 to 131 to become the 23rd president. Calvin Coolidge doesn't run for a third term due to his declining health. So Charles Curtis ends up becoming the first Asian American president in history, or the first Native American president, whichever one you want to classify as. 1929, the Great Depression does begin. President Curtis would sign the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, which only makes the Depression worse. In 1931, however, he does something that would benefit the country, that actually stops the Depression from getting worse. Excuse me. He signs the Freedom to Gamble Act, which federally regulates gambling and, however, makes it legal. In 1932, President Curtis would sign the Revenue Act of 1932, which establishes a gas tax. And, sorry, the pop-up. And the Democrats would nominate Speaker of the House John Garner to run against the president. He would win in a landslide. He would defeat Charles Curtis 454 to 81 to become the 24th president. 1933, President Garner would veto Philippine independence. This is something he didn't support IRL. However, the 20th Amendment is ratified, which is the lame duck amendment, establishes January 20th as the new inauguration day. President Garner also signs an executive order prohibiting citizens owning gold. He signs the Federal Securities Act. The 21st Amendment is passed, which repeals prohibition. 1934, President Garner signs the Gold Reserve Act, and the U.S. occupation of Haiti ends. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below what you think. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to go follow my Twitter at Chaotic Politics. This is the Chaotic One saying, peace.